What I'm about to tell you might sting a little bit, but no one's coming to save you. Not your friends, not the government, not the family that you have, and definitely not that perfect opportunity that's going to land in your lap. And I don't say this to shame you. I say this because the moment you realize no one's coming to save you is a moment you stop waiting and you start building. Hey, friends, it's Jasmine, and welcome to the Unfiltered Flow podcast. And today I'm really excited because we are going to start talking about money. We're talking about the kind of money conversations people whisper about, the stress of the bills piling up, the anxiety of checking your bank account before tapping your card, the quiet fear of wondering if you'll ever get ahead. Because behind a lot of smiles, there's actually a lot of financial stress people don't talk about, and I see it every single day. As a financial advisor at the bank, I sit down with people who are organizing their finances. They're planning their big purchases. Maybe they're buying a house or a car or looking at education. They're applying for loans and lines of credits and credit cards and overall just trying to make sense of their money. Some people, they're doing it really well. Kudos to you. But there are so many of us that are still quietly struggling. There's so many of us that are living paycheck to paycheck and just trying to hold everything together. And I'm talking to you today because we're going to talk about it all honestly, what living paycheck to paycheck actually does for your life. We're going to talk about how and why we're still in this cycle. We're going to look at how credit affects you. And we're also going to look at how we can reduce some of that financial stress in your life. So if you or someone you love is in this paycheck to paycheck living and wants to learn how to reduce some of that stress in your life or their lives, please share this episode with them. This is for you guys. So stay tuned. Stay with me. Let's flow through this podcast episode together. And I promise it's going to get easier. When people talk about living paycheck to paycheck, they usually talk about the numbers, but the real impact, it's emotional. It's the anxiety of when rent is coming out and you're doing that mental math in your head, trying to figure out if you can afford to buy groceries as well. It's the feeling of dread when your phone rings and you know at the other end of that line is a creditor just waiting to get the next dollar out of you. Worse, it's the waiting in line with five other people behind you, waiting, hoping, praying that you see that approved message come up on that terminal. Yeah. I've been there. I've definitely been there. It's the quiet tension that you and your spouse have every night before going to bed about money. And as a parent, it's that guilt that you have to tell your child who wants that small little thing, no, again. Living paycheck to paycheck, it isn't financial pressure. It's survival mode. As we know, survival mode, it's exhausting. You lose sleep, the mental health, the relationships, it all goes downhill. And research in behavioral economics has shown that financial stress reduces cognitive bandwidth. What that means is that when you're constantly worried about money, when you're constantly worried and under pressure, your brain is worried and working under pressure. And what that does is it makes decisions harder. So if you've ever thought, why can't I get ahead? Why do I keep making financial mistakes? It's not that you're bad with money necessarily. It might be that you're just overwhelmed, all of these different things coming at you. So here's the thing. If you feel like you're struggling financially and you're the only one, you're not. According to Statistics Canada, rising inflation and housing costs have significantly increased financial strain on many Canadian households. And in the US, Research from the Federal Reserves has said that many Americans would struggle to cover an unexpected $400 expense without having to borrow or sell something. Studies from Lending Club have also reported that a large portion of Americans, including middle income earners, say they live paycheck to paycheck too. So if you think that you're barely staying afloat, you're not alone. But here's the thing, just because it's common doesn't mean that it's permanent. So one of the big things that people ask me about when they sit down at the bank is their credit score. In Canada, we work with two bureaus. We work with Equifax Canada and TransUnion Canada. So this is obviously going to be Canadian based because that's where I am. So it might not apply to the country you're in right now. But your credit score ranges from 300 to 900. And they track things, these two bureaus, they track things like payment history, credit utilization, length on the credit history, and types of credit, as well as hard inquiries. And when bankers like me look at credit, we're assessing three things. We're assessing risk, we're assessing capacity. So that would be how much can you handle? We're assessing stability. So do you have stable income and employment? Can you make these payments? The biggest factor is payment history. We want to see a resume of how well you've been able to maintain credit over the years. Have you been able to pay back your bills? Are you doing that without missing payments? Those are big things in payment history that bankers look at. The other thing that we look at is credit utilization. That is how much of your available credit are you using? General rule is that you want to keep your balances under 30% credit utilization. So, for example, if you have a credit card that is $1,000 of a limit, your credit utilization should be under $300 at any given time. If you can do that alone, maintain your credit utilization, it's going to help improve your credit score over time. But remember, keeping your utilization low alone isn't enough. You have to maintain that credit history. You have to show good repayment to up your credit score. One of the biggest reasons people stay stuck financially is avoidance. Debt can feel overwhelming. People, they stop checking their statements. You get a bill, it comes, you know where it's from, you know that you owe them, you chuck it behind a book or leave it in a pile of other bills that you're not going to open. And then what that does is that you stop adding up the totals. You tell yourself that you're going to deal with it later, but you actually don't because you can't fix something you refuse to measure. And financial educator Dave Ramsey often says you must gain control over your finances or the lack of it will forever control you. When you build bad habits, it's going to be maintained. If you stop looking at your debt, it's only gonna grow. There's a psychology behind it. And that's the biggest thing. Author Morgan Housel explains that money is often less about intelligence and more about behavior. When you have good saving habits, you're able to save money. When you have bad saving habits, it's harder for you to save money. One of the most emotional moments I see in my job isn't when someone gets approved for a loan or a line of credit or a mortgage. It's when someone actually finally acknowledges their debt out loud. So I remember sitting with a client who had booked an appointment to talk about their finances. When they sat down, they were clearly nervous, and I could feel the weight of the conversation that we were about to have even before opening up their accounts on my computer. And we started to review things slowly. We went through one credit card at a time. We went through the line of credits that they had. We went through the mortgage. We talked about their investments. We talked about the balances and the interest rates. And at one point, they paused and said something that stuck to me. They said, I've never actually added it all up before. So we did that. And when we finished, the total came up to $38,000 in debt, consumer debt. I'm telling you, it was like a needle dropped. You could hear it. And what I did was I told them, it's not that you're irresponsible. I can see that you have a good job. I see that you're making your payments. It's not because you didn't work hard, but because that was the very first time you faced that number out loud, that you actually came to it, is why you're feeling all of this emotion. And then something interesting happened. They felt relieved. They didn't panic. They felt relief. Because once that number was out in the open, it stopped being this giant unknown monster in the back of their head, and it became something we could actually work with. We talked about the interest rates. We talked about what they keep putting the minimum on isn't going to get them anywhere in paying off their principals. We talked about realistic payment strategies that would work for their family, their needs, and their other responsibilities that they had. And before they left, they said something that really stuck with me. They said, I thought it was worse. They thought that they owed more than they actually did. And sometimes the scariest part of debt is the fear of actually looking at it. But once you face that number, you can actually start building. You can start building that plan. If you're stuck living paycheck to paycheck, here are a few things that I would suggest you do. First, you got to know your numbers. You got to write it down. Write your income after the taxes. You write your monthly expenses. You write your debt balances, and you write the interest rate to all those debts. Second, you want to build an emergency fund. So even if it's $500 or $1,000, it can drastically reduce financial panic. Third, you want to focus on the high interest debt first. So credit card interest rates often sit between 19 and 24% interest. That interest works against you every single day. So what you want to do is focus on paying down your higher interest debts first and then move on to the lower interest. Now, here's the caveat to that. You don't stop paying your debts. Just because your main focus is on the higher interest debt first doesn't mean that you stop paying your minimum payments through all of your debts. You got to remember that. You always pay your minimum payments, but work at the higher interest one by putting a little bit extra on top of that to get that debt down first. Fourth, you want to look for ways to increase your income when possible. So maybe that might be finding a side hustle. Maybe it's learning a new skill to add more to your employment. Maybe it's negotiating your salary. And finally, automated savings can help. So, an automated savings or a continuous savings plan is where you automatically, no brain work necessary, you save X amount of dollars every pay. So for example, I have a investment where I put $25 from my account to my investment automatically. I do not have to do a thing. Every 2 weeks, it comes out of my bank account and into my investment, and it's water under the bridge. I don't know about it. It just goes. It's automatic. Don't have to think. It's the best way to save because you just don't have to do anything. You don't have to think about it. It just does it automatically for you. So think about setting one up with your bank. The phrase might sound harsh. No one's coming to save you. But actually, it's quite empowering because once you accept that no one is coming to rescue your finances, you stop waiting around and you start learning how to handle it on your own. You start asking the questions and you start taking ownership. And there is absolutely no shame in learning about money later on in life. Most of us, we were never taught. I was never taught about money. And it was only when I started becoming a financial banker that I actually got serious about handling my money. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with this thought. Money itself isn't happiness. It doesn't guarantee love. It doesn't guarantee purpose, and it doesn't solve every problem in life. But what financial stability does give you is peace. It gives you the ability to breathe easier. It gives you fewer nights laying awake wondering how you're going to pay your next bill, and it relieves the tension. It gives less tension in your relationships when money comes up. It also gives you choices. It gives you choices to create freedom. It gives you freedom to say yes to opportunities and freedoms to say no to things that drain you. Freedom to stop living in constant survival mode. And that kind of breathing room is absolutely a contributor to a happier life. So if you're listening to this and you feel stuck in that cycle of living paycheck to paycheck, I want you to hear this very clearly. There is a way out. It might take discipline and it might take very, very uncomfortable conversations and it might take a lot of time, but the progress is possible. And remember what we said at the beginning of this episode. No one is coming to save you. This is all on you. And the flip side of that truth is very, very powerful. You don't need saving. You need a plan. You need knowledge and you need the courage to start making small changes that compound over time. One decision, one payment, one habit at a time. You don't have to change your life completely. You might not be able to get out of living paycheck to paycheck, but you can start to look at ways on how to better save, better spend, if you talk to your financial planner wherever you bank. Thank you for flowing with me through this. Thank you for listening with me. This is the Unfiltered Flow podcast, real life, real feelings, real movement on and off the mat. Remember, please share this podcast with someone who you think could benefit from a little financial freedom, a little less financial stress in their lives.